Hey everyone, welcome back to Make Others Successful, where we share insight, stories, and strategies to help you build a better workplace. We got 4 people here, again, full house. Today we're talking about next year. We're entering that phase of the year where we're about to hit the holidays, we're about to cross the new year, and even though it's some arbitrary thing, we feel the need to come up with a new goal, new mindset, kind of change everything about this year for next year and hopefully achieve something new. So we're hoping we can lean into that mindset and help share a couple things that are on our minds for the things that we help clients with and sort of inspire some action from those of you listening to maybe tackle some of these things in the new year. So the title is, What If 2025 Was Your Year to ... So we have a couple different topics that we're going to cover over the course of this podcast. We're going to cover having smarter meetings. We're going to cover ditching email. It's a crazy idea. And then fixing your business process. So we're going to kind of start high level and get deeper and deeper over the course of the podcast. But I'm going to hand it to Matt. Actually, let's do intros really quick. For those of you who don't know us, my name's Mitch. I'm one of the partners here. I help with operations and marketing and stuff like that, and happy to chat today.
Yeah. And I'm Emma. I'm our delivery lead, another word for project manager. And I'm going to be specifically talking today all about meetings because that is the bulk of my position and job. I have a lot of meetings.
Definitely.
I'm Mike. I'm a partner here at Bulb as well, and I focus my energy on business apps and automation, so business process and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and Matt Drussel, and I am focused on communication collaboration, so anything to do with Teams and SharePoint and all of that good stuff. So as we move into the topics, the first one we want to talk about is smart meetings and what that means and what it might look like, again, in 2025, if you said, hey, I want to focus on having smart meetings that go beyond just a regular meeting and what that might look like. Emma, can you talk a little bit about why how somebody might feel that is valuable to them?
Yeah. So I'm going to start it by saying, back to our topic of, what if 2025 was your year to have better meetings? Doesn't that sound so nice? Like, I feel like you can take a collective sigh of relief to think through having better meetings in the new year. So for me, what that means is my meetings are productive, they're effective, everyone knows why we're there, and we're able to have actionable takeaways and actually get stuff done. So you're kind of moving away from the ineffective meeting where it just feels like you're meeting because that's what you think you are supposed to do in the business world. But you're actually moving your projects forward. You're moving your work streams forward because of your meetings. I think the topic that's on most people's mind right now in the tech space is AI. And so that's specifically what I want to talk about here is how can you use AI to have smarter meetings?
Okay, so not just, because when you started that, it's like, well, that's a lot about me and doing better meetings, making sure people attend on time and all of that kind of stuff. How would Bulb Digital or how would a technology company help me with that? So you're going to talk specifically about AI, Copilot, like those types of things. Okay.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it does go hand in hand. I think creating better meetings does come down to the facilitator, the person organizing it, the person leading it, the participants. But technology, specifically AI, can actually help in all of those areas. So you don't have to take on all of that burden and all that weight yourself as the organizer. Sometimes it is just about learning how to use the tools to take on some of that weight for you.
I remember once upon a time when I was like a junior developer, I looked at my calendar and it was wide open except for a couple touch bases. And I was so jealous of the people that got to go to meetings all the time because it was like, ooh, that's important. They're doing bigger things than what I'm doing. And obviously as the years go by, slowly the calendar starts to fill up. And now I'm in a world where, today, literally, it was meetings back to back to back to back. And so making sure that those are effective and I'm getting the most out of them just became way more important because I don't have the time outside of I want as much time outside of those because now they're filling up my calendar. So we want to capitalize on the time that we're together.
Yeah. And I think some of the ways that you can make your meetings more effective, Mike and I actually just did a retro on one of our projects and we reflected on this, is making sure every meeting you have has an objective declared, has a really clear purpose, and has a really clear agenda. And then as you're moving through meeting to meeting, week to week, between those meetings, you're declaring what actions are expected to be done, and then you're following up on those. How can tools help with this is probably the next question. Two things that I would mention. One is Loop, and the second is Copilot. So using Copilot to help you as you're having meetings, recap what was talked about in that meeting. And you can actually ask Copilot, hey, what should the agenda be for my next meeting? And it will provide you with agenda items. You can read through those and declare those for the next gathering, but I'm getting sick of saying the word meeting, so I'm trying to think of other words. But then the other side of it is using Loop to capture everything. I sort of see Loop as my digital notebook, and that's where I put the thoughts that Copilot gives me so that I can go from,
You know, it's interesting. Right after this, actually, we're prepping for a webinar where the topic is smart meetings and how to have them. And by the time this comes out, it'll be past that. Maybe we'll do another one. We'll put a link down below where you can learn more. But the thing that comes to mind was little tips like that, where I got some of your slides together, and the tip was putting into Copilot, asking for the agenda for the next meeting, like while you're still in the meeting or while you're ending the meeting, where you're already way ahead because you're just taking information that already exists and putting it somewhere so that you don't have to later, and everyone is ready to use it later.
And it can really be simple. Like I have a pre-meeting and a post-meeting checklist. So little things, I have like 4 or 5 things on both of those. And like you said, I can share those out afterward, or if you come to my webinar, you'll learn them. Just little things of even pre-meeting. Are you checking your Outlook calendar to track what attendees have responded? You know, has everyone confirmed that they're coming? Have you followed up with those who haven't confirmed that they're coming? These are really simple and, basic meeting type etiquette, but I think getting those correct, or even using the tool, using Outlook in that way, I think we forget that we're able to do that, and then put a reminder in a task list to remind yourself to follow up with those people. Again, taking the burden off yourself to remember every little thing and trying to put that into the tool to remind you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's about trying to make yourself more present in the meeting using tools. So it's enabling you to focus on those other things.
Yeah.
I really love this topic because I think it has extremely high potential to improve not only an individual's ability to be effective, but if you're able to figure out how to adopt this culturally across an organization and get everyone using these tools effectively in this way, it can have just a massive impact on the man hours that are spent coordinating meetings and figuring out follow-ups and tasks and agendas and all of that kind of stuff. And it's all right there in the tools.
So the one thing I would be remiss if I didn't mention, the other thing that I've been doing a lot in my recent meetings is always having a planner board or a task list in a Loop, which is somewhat similar to a planner board in a sense. Always having that open while you're in the meeting, and then assigning tasks as things are getting tasked out. So-and-so said they were going to do this. Write what the task is, assign it to them. They're going to get an email. Microsoft will do that for you on, hey, you've been assigned this task, and then you don't even need to do the work of following up with that person immediately because they already have that. They know that you're holding them accountable to it.
And when you go to the next meeting, before the next meeting, you can check progress. How many people have completed their stuff? What's the updates on that?
Yep.
And you can kind of save a little bit of time that you would usually say, hey, everybody, what's the latest and greatest on every little thing?
Right.
Anything else on that?
No, I would just say, using the Copilot recap feature is also a favorite of mine. Part of my post-meeting checklist, I always go through, recap the meeting. That's all within Teams. You can use Teams Premium for that as well. And then pasting that again somewhere that everyone else can see the recap. So those are some of my top tips on having smart meetings. It has really increased my joy of meetings, being able to use all these tools because it takes some of that busy work and that burden off of me.
Off of you.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to mention Microsoft, all they're talking about right now is Copilot. And so this feels like we are like drinking the Kool-Aid and being like, this is the greatest thing. Is in this particular case, it is super helpful.
Yeah.
Like it is
probably the lowest fruit that you can get.
Yeah.
Using Copilot in this way is the easiest, most broad-reaching way that you can get value from getting a Copilot license or a Teams premium license, as you said.
Yeah. So we're not just like riding some coattails.
Yeah,
of
other parts of
Microsoft.
Copilot, it's like, I don't know that everybody needs it, but
Well, and to be totally candid, I don't know a meeting I've been in with you guys that we haven't co-piloted in the last
several months.
Yes, months it's been. So it's like we're not just saying like, oh, you should go try to use it. Like we actually use it for every single 100%. One of our meetings. We see so much value in it. So we're walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
So what if 2025 was their year to do smart meetings? What would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is adopting an experimental mindset. I think using AI, you have to see it as, all right, I'm going to experiment with this. I'm going to see what works for me. I'm going to try out prompts. AI is sometimes only as good as the prompts you're putting into it. Microsoft does have Copilot Labs, which is a website that kind of helps you figure out some good prompts to use. But yeah, just take an experimental mindset. Obviously, get the license. I think that would be the first step. And then just moving forward of, okay, how am I using it in my meetings? Am I asking it to give me tasks? Am I getting recaps? Am I getting agendas? What am I using it for? Where do I get the most value?
Mm-hmm. And I like your concepts of, like, this is very type A, lists of things to do, checklists before the meeting, after the meeting. Like if you do not have those, create some, try it out, see how it works.
Yeah, so that way you're not reinventing every time you get together and you gather. You're not trying to think through, what did I do last week? Just write it down, make some notes for yourself, and make some more repeatable processes. And again, Loop is a great tool for jotting that kind of thing down.
So that kind of closes off about smart meetings. The next topic is ditching email. It's something that we've talked about as an organization for a long period of time. It's something we've evangelized across the board. It's something internally, we have kind of embraced, and it's something that we, none of us really have a lot of internal emails that are going on. So Mitch, if you want to talk a little bit about like, what is that? If someone were to say, I want to be there, I want to be where you guys are related to that, what would that look like? How would they get there?
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of what Emma was just saying. And like, we have been doing this for months. In all of these cases, everything that we're talking about are things that we literally do that we have seen fruits from. So we're talking from firsthand experience, but we send no emails to each other at all. Right? Like wild.
I love it. It's like dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. And for the most part, it's really great. So the concept of ditching email to a lot of people sounds crazy because that is like their lifeblood. They live in their inbox. They want to get to inbox 0 every day. And that feels like a huge accomplishment. But there are challenges when it comes to email and what it does for internal organization communication. And it is not where you want to be. That's what we're sharing, at least. We think what you should be doing is communicating in a space that is organizational in nature, where your back and forth is happening in a shared space that then other people can contribute or have visibility into, or swap out if someone leaves and you have to hire someone new. It creates this life of this knowledge outside of just you and this other person. Because what we figured out is if you're using email or in-person communication, which has its place, it's never going to be used, like especially external, you're going to be emailing people. But when you do that, what you're relying on is you're creating knowledge in one person's brain and another person's brain. And in order for that to be spread and shared with someone, it relies on that person to then go spread that to other people. And then those go spread it to other people. It can work, but it definitely doesn't feel efficient, and it's easy for things to get missed along the way. So we're big proponents of saying for internal communication, you should ditch email as soon as possible. You should lean on a tool like Teams or Slack. We use Slack. We're probably going to switch to Teams soon. But leaning on those tools is way better and really allows us to create that knowledge hub in a central place.
Yeah, so great. We know what we want to do. What are some individual things, something that somebody could do tomorrow that would help them try to get there?
Yeah. So it depends on your role a little bit. If you oversee a team, one of the things I talk about in my Total Communication Reset course is if you own a team and you have purview over that team and you can say, hey, team, we're going to try this thing. What I would say is delegate, figure out who is involved in that process and say, hey, team, we're going to set up this different way of talking. We're going to say for 30 days, we're going to be communicating in these channels, and we're going to stand this up and see how it feels. And we're going to be checking in along the way, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then be able to make a decision on, is this the way to go? That's like in the context of your own team. If you have higher purview than that, then you can maybe have a little bit more authority over multiple teams. That's a bigger engagement. That's a big move and a lot of culture to change. On the far end of the spectrum, if you only have purview over yourself, it's a different game. You can influence other people to meet you where you are, is maybe a nice way to say it. Mm-hmm. So if you at least have a Teams chat or somewhere similar that you can say, hey, so-and-so in an email, the best place to reach me is over here. And hopefully you're not the only one. You can kind of lead alongside other people who believe this is a good direction to go and slowly get buy-in by sort of redirecting conversations into those areas.
So real example, we're part of larger teams that do stuff. And we champion this way of working, but we're working within a larger organization that maybe is more focused on email. And we have a conversation with, the person that's we directly work with and say, hey, we want to leverage this tool. We want to get there. We know that you're not super familiar with it, but do you give me permission to help move that way? They say yes. We start working there. And when there are emails, we say, hey, this is where it's going to go. And because we've had that conversation with our leader, my leader, and they've said, yep, this is what we're doing. When I do that, other people are like, oh yeah, like, yep, that's where I'm supposed to be. And they start working there. And it is true that, the best way to do that stuff is to lead by example, because when you're putting content there, you're creating a repository that people want to start joining with. So that's just a real example. It's taken years to really get to where we are right now with that particular customer and this particular group. But so it's not a night or one-time thing, or it's not going to change overnight. But that's the way to do it.
That's one of the most challenging things. Your question to me was, how can you make progress tomorrow? And while yes, there are things you can tactically do to make progress tomorrow, the hardest pill to swallow is like, this is a lifestyle. This is not a pain pill that you can just pop and feel the relief of. It's something that you will feel the benefits of a month later, 2 months later, and think, oh my gosh, I can't believe we did it any other way. That's not saying you can't start to feel some of that soon, because we've had some clients where, within the context of a couple weeks, they said, oh, let's do this in this channel instead. And they said, instead of 20 or 30 emails going back and forth, we just had one channel, and it was way better.
So this is a perfect example of one of our customers. Actually, we were talking with them and gathering information, and they said, yeah, we're interested in using Teams to do this because over the summer we had a big emergency thing happen, and we all started using Teams because email was going crazy, and we needed to use this other thing. So we started using it. It was great. Everybody loved it. Well, then why didn't you just keep doing it? Because wasn't I don't know,
structured the right way.
We didn't do it. We didn't. And that's what I'm calling out there is really that mindset is the thing you can do tomorrow, which is to say, we as an organization are going to get better at this. I as an individual am going to get better at this because it takes that shift in mindset to recognize, oh, it was better, and we should do something to keep that going. If you don't, the natural pull is to go back to the comfortable, the thing that everybody's done forever and ever. That's what's going to be comfortable for everyone on a team, because not everybody's going to be perfect. That's not the type of thing that you can just turn on and turn off. So
yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why we're talking about this in the scale of a year, where it's saying, what if
it won't get
over
better
the course of a year, you could have no emails by the end of the year. It's crazy. The only other thing that I'll tack on is one of the first lessons I teach in the course is about setting an objective. All of this is not worth anything if you're saying, I'm happy with email, we're getting along just fine, we're making money, woohoo, let's keep it going. Please do not upset the apple cart like if you're good with everything. But if you feel overwhelmed when you come to your inbox, if you feel like things are hard to keep track of and hard to collaborate on and know where things are in their different life cycles across all the different people, and you have trouble with new people coming on board and needing to relay information to them, that's where it's worth investigating. Yeah. But set that objective first.
So I want to paint a picture of what 2025 could look like if you ditch email. Kind of a simple thought exercise. So if you're thinking about email and you're thinking as emails are coming in, and if you're someone who gets a lot of emails, which I know most of us business professionals get a ton of email in a day, every single ping has the same weight. It's the same email after email after email. There's no organization done before that email comes in. It all just gets dropped right into one bucket. Mm-hmm. So think about if you ditch email and you move to what we're talking about, topic-based communication on a digital platform like Teams or Slack, that organization will be done for you. So you'll be able to glance at your list of different teams or channels, and you'll be able to see, oh, there is a new message in an important channel that I should check. That's an important message. There's something going on in that project. I'm on that project. It matters to me. Oh, someone posted in this other channel that has to do with our office location, not as important. I'll get back to that in a little bit. Mentally, the load that takes off of your brain is immense. If you don't have to think the same thoughts about every single notification because it's already organized for you in these topics, I think that to me is one of the greatest benefits of ditching email.
That's one of I was trying to articulate it a while back, which is like that moment of deciding does not exist in your email inbox unless you have like crazy rules set up to organize things for you.
And if you're that person, you're part of the problem.
Last note, if someone is really like, I want to do this and do it fast, we did just put together a new service, which is a team communication boot camp where you can have us come in and actually enact these things and lay it out and get that pilot phase started with your team. That is something that we do. Yep. So if it's not the course where I kind of walk you through some you do it yourself, we're happy to help with any of that stuff too. But you can do it in 2025. I believe in you.
You can 100%. Okay. So that closes off the email, getting rid of email, ditching internal communication via email. Let's move on to our last topic for today, and that is fixing your business process. So if you have a business process that is currently in Excel or maybe in handwritten things or maybe in-person communication that's going on, and you're struggling with, maybe people leaving or people swapping out and being able to kind of make that efficient and it's holding your organization back, what can we do, Mike? Where should we start? What can we expect to get out of it if we focus on this type of improvement?
So the place I think I want to start would be to frame what some of the problems actually look like for people. So when you think about business process and it being messy or not ideal, you mentioned one, which is, are you running your business out of Excel, right? Do you have a spreadsheet that's like the master spreadsheet that it's got all of the project information in it, and you look at that every day to figure out where things are at? That's one scenario. Do you have one or two people who are spending a day a week copy and pasting from one system to maybe another system, an external system or something like that? Those are some pretty strong indicators that you have a process that can be improved.
And when you say that, you don't mean I use Excel to analyze some stuff every once in a while. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about if I created this Excel sheet and if it went away tomorrow, the business would grind to a halt. No one would be able to do anything. We wouldn't be able to make anything happen. Same thing with what you're talking about with the business process being, having somebody go have a conversation with somebody or do other work. It's business critical. It is a fundamental part of your business.
Yeah, so it has something to do with either getting paid or paying someone, right? Yeah. That's an easy way to look at that. So if you're tracking customer orders in a spreadsheet, you probably shouldn't be. And there's a better way if you're tracking people's time in spreadsheets so that they can get paid, right? There's a problem there too. There's there's so many tools today that you can use to solve those problems in some relatively easy ways. One of the things that we see a lot of people do is they'll fall prey to the sunk cost calculation. So if you've been tracking projects or customer information in a spreadsheet for years, somebody's probably, like the brain trust of the organization has probably worked on that spreadsheet, and they've spent countless hours making that spreadsheet do all kinds of things.
Are you speaking from experience right
I am.
now?
I am. I've been there. Like it's, what?
It's been a couple years.
10 years ago now, that's where we started, right? But we didn't have budget for other tools and we were figuring things out. But as time goes on, you keep adding to that process as it exists. And then when you pick your head up and go, man, I wish I had more time to do this other stuff, but I'm stuck doing that. It's really, really hard thing to put down because you have to do what is perceived to be a lot of work to get out of that trap. And because you've invested so much, but it's one of the best things that we've ever done is to move away from the spreadsheet we were using to pay people.
Yep.
Right. And so, yeah, it can be a whole different world.
One thing I want to mention that sort of sneaks its way into this thing is when we talk about business process, often it can feel like something very technical and very, formulaic. There are things that some people view as project management that are actually processes that we might want to kind of help distinguish. Because I was just talking to someone the other day in our community, our membership community, where they are onboarding new customers. They have this 150 task thing that they need to accomplish when they onboard a new customer. So they're looking at project management tools to do that. And I was like, that might not be the way to go. Let's pause just for a second. You probably can make a project management tool work for that. But what if we thought about this as a process instead? Something that you do the same recurring things over and over and over and over. And I think that might be just some nuance of it doesn't have to be a core business process, but it can be some of those like things where maybe you're stumbling on project management things that it's really maybe supposed to be in the process management side.
And that type of scenario fits that same paradigm of like paying people, right? If you run payroll every 2 weeks, that's not a project, that's a process, right? We do something every 2 weeks. If you're onboarding customers, you have X amount of customers that you're onboarding, let's say once a week or once a month. And that's a process. It's a repeated process. So being a recurring action or activity is a strong indicator that probably a project management tool isn't the right thing. And one of the benefits you get from not treating it like a project is you'll set it up in a way that allows you to spend less time setting it up every time, right? Because it just repeats and it knows how to repeat, as opposed to, Emma, we've got a new customer to onboard. Can you set up all of the tasks, right? And so you can save yourself a lot of time in that scenario too. So it is important to distinguish that there are those differences in project versus process. The other thing I'll say about that as well is you have to look at what that process is and really make the determination of whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze. Because you can spend a lot of money and a lot of time automating something, but if you do it 4 times a year, right, quarterly planning, it might not be a thing that you want to automate.
As an example, you talked about setting up customers. That could just really be team task management, right? We have a team, and that team, all they do is set up customers or as a main part of their job. And maybe what you really need to do is have better task management for that team and not a process tool or a project tool to manage each individual thing that is happening, to make sure that all of this stuff gets done. There's lots of different ways to slice it. Let's talk about what they can actually do. So we understand what the problem is. We understand we're talking about, I'm using Excel. I've got some manual processes. It's important to my business. It's using to pay someone, or I'm using it to get paid. What are some things someone can do? What are the approaches that you would talk to somebody who's looking to try to change this in 2025? Like, hey, I want to make these things better. What are some things that they should be looking to do?
Well, there's a lot of new tools in the last 5-10 years that have made things a lot better. So we do a lot of things in Microsoft 365. We use the Power Platform to do a lot of things. A lot of customers that we actually work with have gone from, well, I use Excel to track this process or do this job for my customers. And I think that it can be a better way. And we're implementing that process in a Power App, for example, or using Power Automate. So it can be all the way. It can be like soup to nuts, an app and automation and all of those things. It could also be something as simple as, oh, I didn't realize that there was a connector built into Power BI for that service out there in the cloud. And now I don't have to export data from that service. I can just connect directly to it, and the Power BI report is right there for me, right? And it's got a refresh schedule, and voila, right? And it doesn't take a lot of work to do something like that. So there are a number of different tools that can be used to solve that problem in fairly effective, low-cost ways.
How does someone decide what's worth it and what to do first? Like, because what I'm thinking of is we do this for clients all the time where they literally hire us to say, I want to do these things, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
How do you go in there and process what's going on and help lay out what they should do in what order?
Well, often it's easiest if it's a process that's connected to paying customers. So if it's connected to our customer getting paid by their customers, it can be pretty easy to draw value out of that, right? Because I can either get paid faster, I can save money on the work that I'm doing because it happens more efficiently or effectively. I can have a better experience with the customer, which adds perceived value to my product, right? All of those things can be things that are automated and help improve, and you can draw direct value out of your product, right? And connect it there. That's the easiest scenario. We often also deal with internal processes, so the getting paid side of things. And that's a scenario where we straight up ask questions of our customers. And this is what we would tell you to do too, is like, well, how much time do I spend copy and pasting every week from those Excel sheets into my payroll system, right? So that people can get paid. And you'll often get in that scenario an answer like, well, I spend a day a week doing that, right? That's one person's job a day a week. And if, you can imagine what that costs man hours wise, you can extrapolate from there. That person could be doing something much more valuable with that time. And so you measure that against, well, what would it take to automatically get that data from A to B on a repeated schedule, right? And so I would look, those are the factors that you would take into account. In some scenarios, there's license cost. But what we found is that once you get to that threshold where you're like, oh, maybe I need to spend money on a premium license, it's usually a non-factor because you're hopefully solving a problem that's big enough to make that a very small part of the equation.
So talk to me about, most of what we've talked about so far has been, I want this thing to work the way my Excel file worked, and I want to make that thing happen in the new world and add new bells and whistles. Talk about a scenario where it doesn't make sense to do that, but maybe it does make sense to buy a third-party tool, right? We've talked to several of our customers about, we use, we've said it before, Harvest and Forecast for time tracking for ourselves. I just had a conversation with another customer about that kind of tooling because they're like, I want to do all this stuff with project management stuff, but I also want to track time. And I'm like, well, to do that, you have to do this. And they're like, oh my goodness, I have to put time on every task and I have to, manage it at that level. I just want to do high level. I just want to do something a little bit different. And oftentimes there are third-party tools. So talk to me about how that might fit in.
Well, that's one of the criteria that you should evaluate is there a third-party tool that does this thing so much better than I could do it in a generic way that it warrants the expense for that tool. So we use Harvest and Forecast, for example, to help manage time and forecast projects into the future. But other tools like even QuickBooks, for example, has a feature that allows you to enter time and actually allows your employees to enter time directly on a mobile app. And so that it feeds right into QuickBooks Online, which also has a payroll module, right? So if you're paying for all of the right pieces of that thing that you're already using to watch your numbers, that might make the most sense. And so you need to be able to kind of pick your head up a little bit and look around and not try to shoehorn everything into a specific way of doing it or a specific tool set.
Yeah, talk to me about that specifically, because often what we hear from customers is, I looked at that, but it doesn't do this fancy like even when we do it, when we moved away from our Excel spreadsheet, there's stuff that you can't get out of Harvest and Forecast by default. And we had to let go of that a little bit because it's not core to our business. It doesn't provide value to our customers necessarily directly.
Right.
How we get this number in this way, we can deal with that another way.
Yep. Well, and that's exactly what we've done, right? Is we gave up the core of what we were doing in that spreadsheet and handed it off to another system that does that stuff very well. And in the years subsequent to that, we've rebuilt some of the things that we cared about in other ways, right? We're able to integrate directly with the data that comes out of Harvest and pull it into our own reporting platform and do all kinds of fun calculations on it that aren't in an Excel spreadsheet, right? And that make it more accessible to everyone who needs to be in the know. And it just happens automatically. And every time we add a customer, we don't have to go in there and monkey with data. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The other thing I want to bring back, you guys are talking a lot about like technical side of business process, but sometimes people think business process is, well, first I send an approval email to so-and-so and it's got the file version 12 on it, and then so-and-so sends it version 13 to so-and-so. Sometimes people can think of that as that's our process to get approval on a spreadsheet or on a document. Sometimes simple processes like that can be completely fixed by just turning more to digital collaboration communication tools. So if you're listening and you're thinking, okay, I have a lot of processes that involve, emailing back and forth or just, a meeting about certain things, digital tools can sometimes just relieve you of some of those processes. And to Mitch's point earlier, we had talked with a client who, used to just have a really messy process when they were closing on a deal, and they switched to using Planner and Teams to talk about those things, removed all the email, and the whole process went smoother.
Yeah.
And they were like, I can't imagine going back to the way we were doing it before. So sometimes it's not even building this intense Power App tool or something like that. It is just communicating and collaborating in a digital way.
As simple as digital signatures.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like closing a contract out, like send a digital signature request to somebody.
Yeah. So you're stealing my thunder a little bit.
Oh.
What I want to talk about is the concept of putting all these things together, right? So when we think about all these things together, if you were this next year to work and get meetings to be better, have smart meetings, and you were able to ditch email, much like you're talking about, stop sending files back and forth, use Loop in your meetings, which means that you're storing files probably in SharePoint and you're doing these other things. And when you're doing your emails, you have that in Teams. And so now I can find all that information. And so now I don't need to have my big spreadsheet that tells me the current status of this thing because I can go somewhere else and it's just automatically there, right? And then when I really do have a core process that I do want to make, really super, as you mentioned, is super technical, super difficult, super challenging, but it's super valuable to the business, and I do implement something else. When you stack all these things together, you're going to see a huge transformation in your organization. And for us, these are kind of core tenets of what it means to have a modern organization, a modern business. And it's really something that, they do stack. And they doing one of these simple things like getting rid of email and making smart meetings, what you currently think is a process that needs to get improved, all of a sudden becomes something that is a non-issue. It just works. It's just okay the way it is. It doesn't have to be anything more. You don't have to buy a third-party tool. You don't have to, build anything. And so I think that's the takeaway that I'm taking from what you guys are saying, which is, each one of these things, they're difficult, they're long, as you mentioned, and you mentioned it's not something that's going to happen immediately tomorrow, but if you spend the next year working on even one of these, it's going to start to build that foundation where you can just continue to progress and make this better over time. So I'm looking forward to what people can do.
Yeah, it's really interesting you had that line of thinking because I had the same one. I was going to ask us to reflect on these are all individual things. We're posing them as individual things, but what if in 2025 you did all three?
Yeah.
I want to leave
or at least worked on all three,
that.
right? Like work on all of them a little bit, right? Yeah. Cool.
Go do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
2025, it's your year.
Yeah.
I think that's all we got.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for your time. And like we've said before, we'll have some resources in the description of this podcast, and reach out to us. I don't know if I'm supposed to say something else, but whatever.
Nope. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.